Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org with a video tutorial for the new Boston. In this video we're going to be using jQuery.now to retrieve a current time so we can match it against an event or a time in the future and display to the user how many days until this particular event. So essentially what we're doing is we're allowing the user, or in the back end of our script in ext.js, we're allowing ourselves or someone else to set a textual representation of a time. We're then going to use jQuery now to return the current time, and we're going to work out the amount of days between now and the event. So we're going a little bit over the top here with regards to what we're creating, but this will demonstrate jQuery now and the use for this quite nicely. So the first thing I want to go ahead and do is create an area on my page that I'm actually going to display the amount of days remaining. So for example, this might say, let's say 5 days remaining, if I could spell it right, or only 5 days until this event. I guess we could say that's what we want it to say, that this is what we want it to display on the page, only 5 days until this event. So we're replacing this with the amount of days. Okay, so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're not going to write anything inside of this div. We're going to let ext.js handle absolutely everything. So inside my index.php, I've obviously included jQuery, extremely important because we're using jQuery.now, and ext.js, which is the file that we're going to handle everything in, and that's going to place the text inside of this div here. So the first thing we want to go ahead and do is wait for the document to be ready. So I'm going to say document.ready. So this here selector refers to the document itself, and this refers to the fact that it's an event handler. It refers to when the document is ready, and we can start to manipulate things and do things like that. This is almost instant, but we tend to do this in jQuery every time we write code. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're creating a function inside of here, and inside of the block I'm just going to pull that down so we can start writing our code. Now the first thing we want to go ahead and do is set a time for our event, and this is going to be a string which we're going to supply. For example, 12th of August 2011. It's 8th of August 2011 today, so that's about 3 days to that event. So we'll use this as an example. I'm going to go ahead and create a variable called event time, and this is going to be equal to a string. So let's just go ahead and say 12th of August 2011. Now what I first of all want to do is wrap this in the parse functionality of date. Now this isn't really anything to do with jQuery, it's to do with JavaScript, but we obviously sometimes still need to use JavaScript. jQuery doesn't include some functionality because JavaScript does it on its own well, and you don't need a library for it. So we're using date.parse, and we're wrapping that like that. Let's go ahead and just alert this event time out so we can see what we are displayed with. Let's press F5. Now you notice there's a number of sort of trailing zeros afterwards. What we actually want is we want this to be without the milliseconds afterwards. The zeros, the trailing zeros that you see are the milliseconds. So what we want to go ahead and do is divide this by 1,000, and then we get a representation of this date in seconds rather than with the milliseconds at the end. So this is a lot more helpful because we don't really need to calculate milliseconds. Okay, so now we're going to go and write the or apply the current time to a variable, the value in there. So I'm going to say current time is equal to, let's just tab these over, it's a bit neater. What are we going to say? So current time is equal to jQuery.now, as we've seen, and again we need to divide this by 1,000, because if we were to go ahead and just alert current time on its own, and let's go ahead and refresh, you see that we've got these milliseconds as well afterwards, which change obviously quite rapidly. So we don't really want to be counting milliseconds, so let's go ahead and divide that by 1,000 as well. And now we get a representation of the time here. The only problem is is that we are not flooring this data. Ideally, we want to remove the what's it called after the decimal point. We want to remove anything in the after the decimal point. Basically, we want to round down. So we want to say math.floor and wrap that in there. And we could do the same for the event time as well. I don't know how it handles this, but we'll leave it for now because it will work fine without. Okay, so what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to work out the amount of seconds between these two events. Now, because we're returning them both as seconds, this is quite straightforward. So the amount of seconds between the two events is simply the event time minus the current time. And then we have the difference in seconds between the two events. So let's go ahead and alert out seconds, and let's refresh. And you can see that this is the amount of seconds between the two events, and obviously that will keep changing in value. Okay, so now what we want to go ahead and do is calculate the days. So to calculate the days, we want to take the seconds and we want to divide it by 60 times 60 times 24. Okay, so let's go ahead and alert out days, and we'll go ahead and refresh. And you can see that we've got 3 days here, but we've got point and we've got a lot of decimal places afterwards. So we can go ahead and use math.floor here as well, and this will just return a value of 3. So let's go ahead and wrap this in math.floor. And once we've done that and we alert days out, you can see that we've just got 3. So now we've successfully retrieved the amount of days. And all that's really left to do is go ahead and place it inside this days div here. So we'll go ahead and do that now. We're going to use a jQuery selector to select the days div with the ID of days. Remember, we use a hash to select the ID. And we want to go ahead and place some text in here. And that text is only X days until the event. And with X, we'll just go ahead and concatenate on this days variable that we've created here. So now when we refresh, we get only 3 days until the event. Now, obviously, let's go ahead and I'm just going to tidy this up because that's just what I'm like. But we'll go ahead and maybe change this to 20th of August. And when we refresh, you see you've got 11 days until the event. Let's go ahead and change this to 2015. And you'll see we've got only 1,472 days until the event. So using jQuery.now and I think the rest, certainly these 2 lines here, this line here, are both plain JavaScript. However, this line here obviously uses jQuery.now. I think we can go ahead and use a $ here actually. Let's just check. Yeah, we can. We can use a $ here instead of jQuery. We don't need to use the jQuery notation. Also, this line obviously uses jQuery, but essentially what we've done is used now to grab the current time, floored it, and then worked out the amount of days. So even if you didn't learn too much about the now functionality in jQuery, you've learned how to retrieve an amount of days to an event. So that's about it. We've got only 1,472 days until the event that we specified. Quite an easy piece of code, and also quite effective and useful if you are required to use it at all.